Welcome back to Practice Underwater. This is part two of our interview with Laura. And this was one, again, that, if you haven't listened to part one, this is a practice that we very much would not have at Shared Practices recommended somebody buy. Very small kind of, they call them restarts or, jump starts, whatever you want to call them. And the patient flow is really her big issue. And so this is our kind of our second part to that, where we talk a lot about, what would I do if I owned this practice, and, a lot of the tangible advice that we had. So, Matt, do you have anything you want to add to this one before we get started?
Is that really what they call them? Jump starts or restarts?
Yeah.
That's putting a nice name on something that's not going to be a very nice process.
I've heard both of those words. Have you heard any? Or I think Brady Frank called it value-added practice.
Value-added.
Yeah, I don't know what name it.
This is just so. This is not a shared practice, as you mentioned. We would never recommend someone buy one of these for just the long road ahead of getting it to profitable and where she wants it to be. But I enjoyed this part two interview. This is a good. I liked your back and forth, and you really kind of, like you said, you thought it would be a one-parter, but this second part is really good.
Yeah, the second part was solid. I think the first part was really me exploring what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the second part I had time to actually, give some very great, I think, advice for her. And, anyway, so here we go with the interview.
All right. Well, this is part two of our interview with Laura, and she was making fun of me in the outro or in the gap in between. We say next week, like at the end, but Laura, is it obvious that we record these back to back, like in the same session, or do you guys actually think we take a week break between?
I actually think you take a week break.
Really?
Yeah. I am like, yes.
So you thought we scheduled two 40-minute sessions with somebody?
Yeah, and I was like, man, this guy, this poor
guy. This is all I do. Yeah. I stopped mid-conversation to, but now you got to see it live.
Yes.
And so live, I say stop next week. I click pause on the recording.
Yes.
And then we talk for 30 seconds and then we hit play again.
Right.
And so that is the week. Right. And from a time efficiency standpoint, scheduling an hour on your schedule versus scheduling an hour and a half is not a big deal.
Right.
But if Matt and I each do an hour and a half, then that's a whole month of content that we can record, and we each get one hour and a half appointment. So
yeah,
that's the way we record Practice Underwater, the behind the scenes for our audience. And it's funny because it was the last 3 Practice Underwaters I've done now. I have remarked on the fact that this is not supposed to be my interview. And I
almost messaged you to be like, this is not your interview.
This is not my interview.
Here we are.
It's funny because how I found Laura was I messaged her because there was some comment on Facebook that indicated that she'd be a good guest. And
thank you.
I think that's how I found the last. I think one emailed me of my last 3, and the other 2 were this weird way that's not the typical way that they contact us. Usually, the guest is pretty good about contacting the host that is better for the interview. And so I get a lot of groups, Matt gets a lot of solos, and it just works. And then I make the mistake of reaching out to people that I think would be interesting to have on the show, and it doesn't work out well for me when I don't. And then it's funny because, we hop on air, and right before I click record, I ask her, what's the name of the practice? She gives me the name of the practice so I can go look it up and practice my numbers. And as I'm recording, I'm looking at the numbers for the first time, and I'm realizing this practice does $13K a month in revenue. This is not my interview. And the reason I say that, and if you haven't listened to part 1, I need to do a little synopsis. So Laura here is a dentist in she works in a state we won't talk about. And she bought a practice in this really high-end part of town. She compared it to Scottsdale of Arizona, which if you don't know Scottsdale, it's the most expensive part of town that all the rich people want to live in. And it's a very highly desirable part of town. And so she's happy that she lives there. She moved there and then happened to find a practice off market that she bought for $150,000. It's a plumbed 4 ops, equipped 3 ops practice. It has about 550 patients. It does about $230K in revenue. And in the last part, we talked a lot about, she spent some money on some marketing. And I sort of told her that we're playing the long game here. And we need to work on building up our online reputation. We need to work on getting some stability in the practice with some staff. And, we really need to be getting, some stability in the infrastructure, some more revenue. Off 550 patients, I think she could realistically do $40K a month if she's doing everything well. And so getting that done internally before we spend money externally on more patients would be my preference. And so a lot of this interview I want to talk about, and this is where we sort of made the joke about this is not my interview. I am not the guy to be doing this type of coaching. And it's really not because I don't know how to, or I don't know even if I was in your shoes, I wouldn't be able to do. It's just all of the things that you have to do to get your practice to where you want it to go are things I hate. And so it's not a good fit for me to sit here and, like, if we were to coach together, for me to sit here and coach you on all this stuff I find just atrociously boring and you don't want to do it, versus somebody who's a little bit, and so that's why I say that. But I think this will be a fun exercise for me personally, where I can kind of put myself in your shoes, because we graduated the same year. And so put myself in your shoes and really say, okay, what would I do if I was Laura in this practice? And I don't know, do you want me to go through like 20 minutes of what I would do?
Yeah, I would love that.
So if I, in a different life, George likes being a solo. And,
what would your name be?
Oh, you're going to practice underwater, me too?
Yes.
So my fake name is always Joffrey. So that is the name I give whenever I'm trying to mess with somebody. And I always spell it the GEO FFREY. So it's like the wrong spelling of the name Jeffrey. And I think it's, or I'll do Greg Oreo, like Gregorio, but I'll spell it like the Oreo cookie at the end. So those are my two fake names that I love, Gregorio and Joffrey. And so if I was either of those characters and I was a solo that enjoyed this, and I walked into this practice, and I honestly, so entrepreneurial me, wow, this is a cool exercise. Is it okay if I talk for like 15 minutes, just pretty nonstop? So entrepreneurial me would look at this practice and say, okay, this reminds me a lot like what Mark Casas did at the beginning of his career. He bought a lot of these small, very cheap offices, and he went in there and jacked them up almost himself. And so he was very clinically dependent on himself early in his career. And right, I don't know this personally, it's stuff I heard on air, him talking about. And then you kind of go around and do that whole exercise. So for me, I would look at this practice as an opportunity to potentially flip it. That was the only thing that I would really value in a 4-op practice, is getting it to like 1.2 million in revenue and then selling it for like $1 million and walking away with 850K of extra net worth. That's something that I would call like a 3 to 4 year project. So if I walked into this practice, my first and foremost task would be stable team. And stable team for me would be, I want 3 employees. That's all I'm going to have at first, that are just, awesome. And walking into that, I would start with that schedule we had talked about in part 1. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, space, next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so I have a 5-day weekend and a 2-day weekend, kind of, going back and forth. And Laura, I'll send you this recording before it gets released. Actually, this will probably be released soon, but I'll send you the recording anyway. That way, you don't have to write anything down. You can just listen to it again if you'd like to. But I would go to that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then I would get my team on board. And Laura only has 550 patients. So if I'm in a practice with 550 patients, most important thing to me is quality of the team member, not the goodwill with the patients. So I am not concerned about losing patients for not seeing the right hygienist. I am not concerned about my front office not being a good fit. If I would rather get rid of those team members early and get the right people in place. So it's a very different, and right, you have really one employee right now. So
yeah, and she's great.
Right? So I would focus on, I want one amazing expanded function assistant. So I have my add up, and right, you've already acknowledged the fact you're not going to be making a lot of money from this practice initially.
Right.
So I would invest in really high quality team members and make sure you have yourself set up with every day you're there, you have one front office, one expanded function assistant, and one hygienist. And you guys do you have Isovacs or IsoDries or Dry Shields or any of those?
Actually, during all of this, because they're like all on back order, I somehow acquired one from a Facebook like marketplace.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, it's Isolite. It was great. I saved like $1,000. I was like, all right.
Yeah.
So,
and so then you can rock 2 ops with that one assistant. So your 3 chairs, you have one hygienist, you have one EFTA, and then you have you.
Right.
And there is honestly, you don't need any more people in that practice for a very long time.
Right.
You can do a lot with that small of a team. Do you do clinically? What is your skill set like?
So I do bread and butter, and I focus on kids and cosmetics are like my 2 favorite areas.
Okay.
So.
Kids in this practice, I don't love.
Okay.
There's just not that many ops, and kids
Yeah.
are short appointments, a lot of operatories, high patient flow. It's like the exact opposite of everything you have at your disposal right now.
Right.
I think elderly patients, more treatment per patient. What's your patient base like? Is it elderly?
Actually, it is roughly around probably around my age, and then it's also elderly. So
So
it's
like
kind of those two.
parents and kids kind of that have been coming to him for like the last 30 years or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I would, but you got the patients you have, but my primary focus would be getting 3 days a week of hygiene filled. And
Yes.
that's twofold, right? That's on your front office to call patients, reactivate people, and your
Yes.
state isn't blowing up with COVID, right?
It is.
It is. So you're one of the hot states?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, there's like 20 of them, so we still don't know what state.
No.
Um, Arizona's a hot state right now. We're getting shamed like Texas and Florida. So, I know your state isn't one of those. So you have to be in tier 2 of hot states. But I think it's, for the most part, should be mildly acceptable to call people. I don't think
Yeah.
people get very upset at that, calling them to come to the dentist. If they are uncomfortable, then you can schedule them in October. But I would have my front office. I would get a solid front office,
Okay.
and I would get 3 days a week of hygiene.
Okay.
And then, right, normally my philosophy is to get people into hygiene and fill it up a lot because of the fact that, realistically, I always like to leave hygiene openings for new patients. But in your
Yes.
case, that's not really a thing because,
So
go ahead.
I I did what you guys recommended. I
Uh-huh.
did block out one a week of a
Okay.
new patient so that because I don't want any new patient waiting 3 months or 2
Sure.
months. So, yep, I did that. So,
Did you get new patients filling in those appointments?
nope. I'll be honest.
Yeah, so that was what I was about to say.
Yeah, so that's
You
not
don't
good.
have a baseline
Yeah.
new patient flow right now.
Right.
Like your practice doesn't have people calling to schedule appointments.
Right.
So the probably don't have to save appointments for them. I would have 3 days a week of hygiene, and there should be enough openings in those 3 days to fit the number of new patients you'll be seeing.
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely, but I think for me, the 3 days a week of hygiene is
Key.
probably key, and the front office is key because
Yeah.
those two go together.
Right.
Because the hygiene, right, and you said they were friends, right?
Yes.
So this is leadership exercise where you can go up to the front office and you can say, okay, I want to bring her in 3 days a week, but you've got to keep her busy.
Yeah, and we've already talked about that. So we've gotten through the call list of the patients that were supposed to be seen during the pandemic. So we did get through all of that. That was a mission of mine, like right when I started. I said, because he kind of came in, semi-retired after the pandemic, and I knew he didn't do it. So that was kind of a goal of mine. So we've gotten through it all.
So you've gotten through it all?
Yep.
Okay, and then so 40% of your patients are still overdue. Is that because they set up appointments, or is that because they didn't want to come in, or they didn't answer, or what happened?
Yeah, so they didn't answer or they don't want to come in. It's one of the two. So I keep, I try to coach the front desk, like saying, dental office is a very safe place during this time, but you can't really change anyone's mind. So
yeah, and you have this huge problem right now where in October you don't have any recall patients.
Yes.
So one thing we've been having our front office do is anytime somebody's uncomfortable, we say, oh, no worries. We're not going to argue with you on it. We're going to put you in October.
Yep.
And that'll give you some time to let things, kind of, and then that way we at least get them on the books in the month that we want them to be there, because of the fact that, you guys were closed in April. So 6 months from then, October, there's a lot of hygiene openings. Getting them in October is huge.
Yes.
But I think my number one focus would be you have enough patients to fill 3 hygiene days a week, like 60, 70% full, enough to justify having that day there.
Okay.
And you have enough restorative work to be pulled out of that to keep yourself busy with one assistant and then a front office.
Okay.
So objective number one for me would always be to build a solid base of, great patient experience. And right, I know I, don't use the most loving words when talking about the great patient experience, but in a solo office where you're trying to build it, like that actually matters.
Yeah.
And, the great patient experience, building your online reputation with reviews, and having your 3 solid team members. I really think that's step 1.
Okay.
Those things. 3 days a week of hygiene full. And right now your practice has a lot of patients overdue, a lot of because of COVID, and your reappointment right now is not the best. So you're like
Right.
74% of your patients are rescheduling.
Yeah.
So, getting those 2 things in place, and then getting a solid front office,
Okay.
and I'm not saying your front office isn't solid or not. I can't tell at this time. Your
Right.
AR is small because it's small.
Right.
So it's hard to tell, but just getting systems in place and stable staff,
Okay.
would be the biggest thing. And that's like really step 1. And you can do that out of your 3 ops. And
Yes.
it's really minimal. I'm trying to say like minimal investment in the practice in terms of like, think about it. How much did you spend on direct mail?
About I think 2,500.
So $2,500, that's like a whole month of paying your hygienist.
Yes.
So for me, I would much rather you spend all of your budget dollars on growing the practice on staff.
Okay.
Because they have the infrastructures there. That's the thing I would really want you to be in the mindset of until you're doing like mid 30s, 30, 40K a month. I really want your majority of your investment dollars to be in having staff there, building infrastructure, building solid systems in place so your practice runs well. And then you invest in that 4th operatory, the 2nd hygienist, the marketing, the 2nd assistant, kind of those. That's like step 2.
Okay.
But I think that's for you probably like 9 months away.
Yeah.
I think you have a lot of work to do with the current staff. So the assistant or the front desk assistant, how do you like her?
She's great. Assistant wise, obviously I would prefer an FDub than just a dental assistant. She actually thinks I don't even ask her. It just shows up on my desk, and it's so nice
Oh, that is nice.
Yeah, she already knows what I'm probably going to ask. So I kind of told her, before we started, that I do not want to micromanage her, and I'm one of those people that I like to delegate. You open the mail, you input the AR, you try to do collections, and those are your roles. Those are not my roles. And so then behind the scenes, obviously I'm making sure everything is being inputted correctly. So, yeah, she's doing a good job with everything that has happened, because she went from A to Z. So he was very laid back, like really laid back, very retired, to now me, who is young and ready to grow this practice. So she's doing a good job at balancing that right now. And I really appreciate her. She drives from very far away. She commutes. And
how old is she?
She's in her 50s.
Okay.
Yeah. So she's been at the practice for over 20 years.
So she feels like a mom to you sometimes?
Oh, 100%.
I love that feeling with staff. It's the best.
Yeah. I mean, she asks me every day about, when we're in the practice, she's always like, so, how's the dating life going? And I'm like, oh no, I'm hiding.
Oh gosh.
I go, oh my gosh, a patient, I gotta go input something into the computer. See ya. Like, run the other way. So yeah, she's definitely the mother hen, so really appreciate it. But I also ask her too. I mean, she's been extremely honest with me. I ask, has this been done before? How are you doing it this way? And she's very honest about what was done in the past. So I appreciate that.
She feels like a really long-term player, as long as you can have her.
I know. And I mean, she's already told me that obviously the commute is very long for her. She's commuting about an hour away. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. And I explained to her, listen, if we ever get down the road where it's starting to get too much, let me know. I mean, I would be more than willing to put her, give her a name to some of my friends who live near her, because I feel like she would be a great asset to anyone's practice. So
That's awesome. Good for you.
thank you.
Yeah, and if she's been making the commute for 20 years, you know, who knows? You don't know how long you're going to have her.
Right.
But you don't want to make that switch. She seems great.
Yeah, I know. So I took her out to lunch for her birthday and she was like, no one's ever done this. I was like, it's your birthday. Like, so, I didn't, everyone is family to me, even patients and staff. I try to have a fun time with them. We're still getting to know my terrible singing. She still hasn't heard it yet, but it's coming. So,
Are you from the South?
I am not.
You're from the state that you're in?
Yeah.
Okay. You kind of have that like Southern hospitality vibe to you. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, I think staff love it's funny. I walked into my office and my hygienist it was after the weekend. And I went up to her and said, what'd you do this weekend? Like, how'd it go? And I found out months later that they were all floored that I asked them about their weekends. And it's like such a simple question that we just do to be polite.
Yeah.
But they're not used to getting that. A lot of older doctors that we take over from don't treat their staff like friends or people.
Right.
And I think that's a younger doctor thing, is that, we tend to befriend our teams and enjoy that.
Well, and my parents both had businesses. And so I've learned a lot from just seeing how they interact with their clientele. And neither of them are dentists, but I kind of saw how they did, especially with, people. And that's kind of where I learned it from. So I'll shout out to them.
Yeah.
Hi, Mom and Dad. They're going to listen to this, by the way.
They are?
Oh, they sat in on your Zoom meeting.
They what?
They sat in on the Zoom meeting during the pandemic.
With your seller?
No, with you. You guys had the that Zoom.
Oh, the Zoom webinar. Oh, they were there?
Oh yeah, they were like all about it. They love, I feel like they're like kind of dentists themselves. I felt like they went through dental school too. So I actually give my dad all the books that you guys have recommended and I've read, and I pass them off, and he's sitting there like in the Zoom meeting. He goes, how much did that cost? I was like, it was free. He was like, that was like $500 worth of knowledge. I was like, Dad, don't tell him that.
No, we don't charge for those. But oh man, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow. This is the second time we have a new intern, Peyton Keller.
Oh,
and
yeah. Mm-hmm.
His dad is a fan of the show too.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, my dad loves you guys. And that idea to me is so, I was doing this for a year before my parents ever found out about it.
Oh, really?
And,
okay.
Yeah, I didn't tell them that I was doing this. So if I come from a totally opposite perspective where my parents don't know much about, definitely what podcast I'm listening to. So I think the fact that I have parent fans out there, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That probably made my day, to be honest. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, he actually wanted to be here. And I was like, Dad, we're on headphones. Like, you're not going to be able to hear what's going on. He was like, oh, okay. So he's actually at the golf tournament. So that's where I just came from. I went to, we were watching this golf tournament outside, and I was like, yeah, I got to go. Bye. So he's still there.
Wow, that is hilarious. All right. Well, hi, Dad.
Yeah.
And, wow. Well, I think but back to the staff thing.
Yeah.
That the way to keep her is for her to feel appreciated.
Yeah.
So they did this study and they found that, what are the things that employees value the most? Number one on that list was feeling valued. And so everything you told me about her, how you love how honest she is, how you love all of those things, have to let her know that.
Yeah. And I say thank you at the end of every single day.
Yeah.
And that to me is like the biggest thing. So, because I appreciate, everything that we have done in the last couple of weeks has been just crazy. So, I say thank you every day. So,
yeah. And, the fact that she drives an hour, just lets you know that you need to be really on your game with making sure that you're checking in with her and she feels valued and appreciated. And she knows that she's a valuable part of the team. Yeah. That'll keep her driving an hour a day.
Okay.
And, those are it's so funny how, your staff, and it has to be genuine. I'm big on that.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't genuinely feel something, don't say anything, like, but if you feel something, then you have to say it.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, but let's talk about the hygienist.
Yes.
So do you see her in the same light as this front office, that she's a long-term fit? You like her personality, you guys work well together, all that stuff?
So I haven't worked with her, so I don't know. But the small interactions that I've had are a little bit questionable. So I'm like not a negative person at all. That's why it's very like hard for me to even talk about this, because I like to see the positive in everyone. And
Mhm.
so it was really difficult when I interviewed her. She made a couple comments such as, "Oh, well, the patients will leave if I leave." And I was like, okay, I see where this is going. So, and I know right now it's a really hard time to find hygienists, especially
Mhm.
in the state that I'm in. They have a nice Facebook group.
Ugh,
I know,
jeez.
I know. And it was, I feel like actually the two hardest days in the pandemic were not buying this practice. It actually was reading the Facebook posts. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the hygiene Facebook groups. Geez, you listened to my other show, so you heard me use different words when describing those things. And yes,
yeah,
yeah, I just can't stand that. But so did she say anything, else other than patients will leave when I leave, or what else happened?
no, she just was really hesitant on the changes with the new X-ray, the digital X-ray.
Hmm.
So I don't like to be the bad guy. I like to be, the good guy. So I actually set up training for her before she starts early in the morning, so that the training doesn't come from me, so that if she has questions, she has someone to do that. So I'm very I can be confrontational, but I think in this situation, it would be best to have someone train her instead of me. So I think that will be a good kind of segue. And then I'm buying her lunch that day. I'm buying the staff lunch the first day so that we can all sit and have like a nice family lunch time together. So, and then I'll be able to kind of see how she interacts with the patients.
I'm going to ask you about that. I don't like being the bad guy thing.
I
I'm not
know.
letting that slide.
I know.
Talk about it.
Yeah. So, especially with, having her first starting, I don't want to be, that she gets mad at me. I want her to get mad. If she's going to be mad, I want her to be mad at the X-ray unit.
Why don't you want her to be mad at you?
Well, I just don't want to rock any boats to start off on the wrong foot. So I'm all about
Why not?
the first impressions. I want the first impression rose from her.
And why?
Because I feel like since the front desk and her have such a really close relationship, they totally talk outside of the office. I can already see where this is going, and I don't want them to be gossiping about me and behind the scenes, because I like to be that person that is, I don't know how to say it, like very straightforward. So that's why.
So you don't like it? You don't like the idea of your staff talking about you behind your back?
No, I don't want that at all. But I know it's going to happen.
Yeah. So like it or not, no matter who you are,
Yeah.
no matter, like, my staff listens to the show. Like, you guys are listening. You
Yeah.
guys
Shout
talk
out to
about
the
me.
three
The
hygienists.
three hygienists that talk about me behind my back. Yeah. So that is like, so this actually, the reason I noticed I picked on you for that is
Yes.
because you and I have very similar personality types.
Mhm.
And I'm talking to a very early ownership version of George, where I wanted everyone to
Jeffrey.
like me, and I want Joffrey, yeah, sorry,
Joffrey.
and
Sorry.
I wanted everyone to like me,
Yeah.
and I wanted everybody to be my friend, and I wanted to not rock any boats, and I never wanted to, yeah, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, the big the big shift was, for me, it meant if they're talking about you, there's one step further. What does that mean about you?
Right.
Like, what does that mean?
So that means either A, I'm in their good graces, or B, I'm not in their good graces. So it's one of the two. Yeah.
But what if you're not in their good graces? What does that mean about you? Like, what does that say about you?
I don't know. I don't, this is
But
something.
I mean,
yeah.
You're making it about something, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're afraid of them talking about you behind your back and there's some negative feeling about yourself that you'll have because of it, right? Like, that's not going to feel good.
Right. Yeah.
And so
we're just
we're avoiding that negative feeling.
Exactly. And it's going to be unavoidable very soon.
But the shift is not. So the point I'm trying to make is they will talk about you behind your back.
Right.
That's going to happen.
Yes.
It doesn't mean anything that you're making it mean. It just means that they're staff and they talk about you behind your back, right?
Yeah.
You're interesting. You're their boss. Like,
yeah.
I don't think either of them like the new x-rays.
Yeah.
Like, if I've been doing it the same way for 30 years or 20 years, and some person comes in and shows me a new x-ray unit that I've never known how to use, yeah, I'm going to be frustrated.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be super happy with that boss for a minute. Right. But let's analyze you objectively here. Right. You're giving your patients a higher quality x-ray.
Right.
With less radiation.
Right.
That can diagnose more effectively.
Yes.
Those are all things that are totally solid.
Right. And the front desk is on board with this x-ray unit. She's seen the difference already. And so I think that will definitely be a good situation. The other thing too is I am very I like good notes. And so I already set up an auto note. I'm trying to make their lives very easy. I like simple. Yeah. I like simple, very simple. And so the note thing, and then I've already spoken to her about the adult fluoride because that was not happening in the practice. So I have been, coaching her already on the adult fluoride, even in the interview. So I have a box waiting for her first day. Surprise.
Yeah, she's not going to like you.
I know.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think I want you to make the connection that doesn't mean any of the stuff that you think it means. It just is it's all of her stuff. Right? So, like, what do we know about this hygienist so far? She's resistant to change.
Yes.
Right. And it's not her personally. A lot of hygienists who have been doing something for 20 years are very resistant to change.
Right.
So one of the 3 hygienists that I always talk about, she was very resistant to change, and as we kept changing things and she kept experiencing what change is like, now she's like one of my most easygoing team members with change.
Okay.
And so it's great. And it was a total 180, where it looked very early on, it was like, how is this going to work? And now it's like, we're best friends. And so it's just, but that's normal.
Okay.
Right. For 20 years, she's had no change and a very laid back doctor and, dipping x-rays into whatever. And, now you're like totally shaking up her life. And hygienists tend to be very detail oriented people that are inherently skeptical, right? Like, if we're generalizing the hygienist personality type, they tend to be pretty skeptical people that are pretty detail oriented, that need more information. They're, they get worried a lot. They always worry about running late, so
I don't like running late either. So that's great. We're on the same page.
You're on the same page, but she has all of these concerns.
Right.
And these concerns are showing up. And those are the reasons why you don't like her, because you're not seeing her in her best place. You're seeing her as like, I'm worried about all this crap you're throwing my way. And, like, it's a lot.
It is.
And so I think you need to accept the fact that she is going to not like you for a minute. And you work through that. You listen to her concerns. You address them. You don't ignore the fact that she doesn't like you. You just don't let it mean something about you.
Okay.
You're doing all the right things.
Okay.
And you need to be firm in that.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
If she comes in and says, I don't like the adult fluoride, you're like, I like adult fluoride. It's staying, and you just need to be firm in those things. And you got to support her and give her what she needs and listen to her. But if it doesn't work, that's also okay.
Right. And I also got an intraoral camera.
You know,
Just
you're
add
throwing
that
a
on
lot
the
of
list.
stuff at her, right?
I
Like
am. That is the
this
other
isn't
thing. I
the
forgot
most
about that.
simple, you know, so just give her some, be patient with her.
Okay.
Because you're throwing like 6 things at her
No.
that are new doctor,
I know.
potentially new schedule, intraoral camera, digital x-rays, adult fluoride.
Yeah.
That's 6.
Yeah. And I mean, the other concern that she had was, am I changing like the times of the appointments? I was like, no, we are not.
How
So
are they an hour for recare?
they are, if they're a prophy, they're 45 minutes. But we've been blocking them out so that you can, like, there's a little leeway. So the new patient's like an hour and a half. But I'm going to go in and, you know, switch it to an hour just to make, you know, everyone feel extremely more comfortable.
So
So
recare to an hour?
yeah.
Yeah, I tend to, so honestly, I like recare in an hour.
I do too. And it will give me at least a few extra minutes to get to know a patient. I mean, it's been actually really kind of nice getting to know these patients this last month. And it will give me that extra couple minutes to kind of really, you know, get to know them. So
Yeah, and dentist personality type, are you tend to be like the patient friend, very chatty, sociable with the patients, or you tend to be kind of in and out, minimal interaction?
I'm like an in-betweener.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like fake patient interaction, but really just trying to get in and out.
Okay. All fair.
You're anonymous. Why do you care? Come on. I'm the one that's
true.
putting myself out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it depends on like if we have something in common, I'll obviously chat more. But if we don't, I'm like, if I can tell that they're like a chatter, I like be like, okay, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you. There's new chapstick at the front.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm pretty big on the make the patient laugh
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
stop. You know, because once they laugh, they've connected with me, and then any more time I spend is just whatever. I've already got them. And
Yeah.
so
I try to find a common ground with them. That's like my goal. So I'll always be like, oh, where are you from? And see, because a lot of people from where I'm originally from, because I'm not from the city that I'm currently living in, or will stay living in forever now, they, a lot of them are originally from the same area I'm originally from. So it's kind of a great like common ground with the patient. So that's like my first question. Or, you know, I'm trying to think some other ones that I asked them if they love Trader Joe's, because I could talk about Trader Joe's for like 2 hours. So
jeez.
I know.
Okay. Well,
yeah. Anyways, moving
you know,
on.
and I think it's funny because you have, so let's go back to, you know, your kind of your overarching thing here. Step 1, we already talked about it, right?
Yes.
Your 3 employee team, getting
Yes.
that solid. And then step 2 is kind of taking it to that 2 hygienist, 2 assistant, 2 front office team.
Yes.
And, you know, but for step 1, you know, some of the things that we haven't talked about are diagnosis, case acceptance, treatment planning. Those are really important at this stage.
Yes.
You know, so your associateships, how confident are you in your ability to, you know, sell dentistry?
Yeah. So we're not going to speak of the software that we used before at my last associateship. Shout out to PBN. So
oh, Dental Intel.
Yeah.
And they
And
suck. That's okay. We can say their name.
okay, so
we just followed up with they suck. Rohit was like that. I mean, they're okay. They're just not the best, but
yeah, it's not the best. And so they tracked me at my last, because they had a consultant in the practice. And so I was actually doing I think 76% was 1 month, and then 80 was another month.
Patient acceptance?
Yeah.
Do you know your total diagnosis numbers?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I look at patient acceptance as it almost as like, well, how much are you diagnosing? How hard are you making your job? You know, because I've seen docs that have like some of the worst diagnosers have the highest case acceptance because they only diagnose like broken cusps and patients in pain. And so it's like, yeah, you have high patient acceptance, but you're not really like trying anything that hard. You know, I diagnosed a ton of night guards.
Yes.
We diagnose a lot of implants. We do a lot of Invisalign, and so all of those things are harder to convert treatment. And
Yeah.
so a 76 in my practice versus a 76 in another practice are two completely different numbers.
Right. And I definitely am big on implants.
I can tell you've diagnosed quite a few implants in the 1 month that you've been there.
Yeah, because a lot of patients either have had endo in the past and they don't want to go down the endo road, and so I just automatically just say I would just do an implant. So I also had a fair share of implant experience in dental school. I didn't place them, but I had a lot of patients who had them placed. So it was a great experience for me. So I like implants. So
when did you take over? So this is July 26th that we're talking. What day did you take over?
The 29th of June.
Of June.
Yep.
Okay. So your seller, in his semi-retired 1 month of laziness, quite frankly, outperformed you by a fair margin in the diagnosis case acceptance world.
Interesting.
So let me see how many patients you guys each saw before I totally say that. But on the surface, that's what it's looking like.
Okay.
So I would reevaluate your that process.
Okay.
The diagnosis case acceptance game.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys saw about the same number of patients, and he accepted about 2.5 times what you accepted.
Okay.
In terms of treatment.
Okay.
So I think there is some room to improve there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. We're both graduated at the same time, so we both have about the same amount of clinical experience. So it feels like you kind of are the way you are as a dentist. You're pretty settled in, is my guess. Does that kind of feel like your experience right now? Like you feel like comfortable, and you don't really feel like you're learning a whole lot anymore?
Yeah, I really want to do Invisalign.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's kind of the area that I'm going to hopefully grow in the dental world. But yeah, I'm pretty, I mean, you guys talked about this too, about the cracked teeth. I mean, that's still an ongoing learning curve for, I think, for myself and for a new grad. So I feel like that's kind of the waters I'm still trudging. So.
Yeah. And so I think, biggest things that are going to make you successful right now, your ability to form a cohesive team.
Yep.
Your ability to present and communicate treatment.
Okay.
1, 2. And then 3, the way you run your practice. And it's funny because my 3 things that predicate my success are totally different than yours, because your practice is like so small that you have a lot of room for error. You're not super overwhelmed with patient flow. Your systems don't have to be super tight right now, but as you get bigger, and then you're going to start noticing things. So I think you have 9 solid months of, let's call this first 9-month period of just getting to the point where you're ready to turn the knob on some marketing, get a second hygienist, second assistant. But for the next 9 months, it's really about building your Google reviews while you're working inside your practice to get a stable team.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, I think we're good. Thank you so much.
This is fun.
Yeah.
And, I want to go back to, I think I kind of stopped. Did I stop midway through my story of what I would do with this practice? I think I did. I don't know where I left off, but, I getting this practice to the point where Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, doing like 1.415.
Okay.
That's kind of your max.
Right.
I can't see it going any higher than that.
Right.
Without doing some really special things. I think around 1.2, you'll start getting a rate of diminishing returns, about 100K a month. So at that time, that's kind of, I don't want to say it, but that's when you decide, that's your pivot point. Do I do something else? Do I stay here forever and just kind of take it easy and find something else in my life to take my energy away? Because we always have that, like, you're building something.
Yeah.
So you have like a lot of energy going into the build.
Right.
And then when it's built, you're going to be like, well, where do I go now? And, it's not going to continue to be in your practice. And I think people get themselves in that problem where they have like this 4-op practice doing 100K a month, and they're spending as much time and energy on the practice than they did like now for you,
Right.
and it doesn't it doesn't have anywhere to go. It's done.
Yeah.
And so then you need to either take on another project in your life or have a
I just need
baby
to
or
play
something.
more golf. That's all.
Yeah. Are you a golfer?
Yeah.
What's your handicap?
Could be. It might be a 16 now.
Wow, solid.
I don't know. It might be. I don't know. So
Nice. Cool.
it needs to be
Well,
better than that. It was a 10 at one point. But
see, when your practice is doing 100K a month,
yeah.
you're working 3 days a week, you have a week off every other week, you go on the golf course and you
Right.
work on your handicap. Golf is the best place to get that energy out because you can never be good enough,
Oh, I
and you
know.
can always keep getting better. And yeah, so
I feel like it's very similar to dentistry. You need to know.
yes,
You need to know when to walk away.
yes. And back to your practice, golf, I always call it a game of misses. It's never about the good shots, it's about where you missed.
Yeah.
And in your acquisition, your misses, you chose the miss of, you got where you wanted to live, you got
Right.
the location you wanted,
Yeah.
and you pretty much missed on everything else. And
Yeah.
so it just takes a lot of time to kind of undo that, but you're where you want to be. So for you, that was probably the right move.
Yeah. And I'm definitely, really happy with, the practice in itself. So far.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let's hope that I get some groups coming up in some upcoming interviews. I want to get back to my comfort zone here, taking me out of it, Laura. So anyway, I appreciate you coming on and being vulnerable with us and
Well,
talking
thank
about
you
your
so
practice.
much. I appreciate it.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. What do we got for this part 2 then?
Let's talk timelines. I don't think I addressed that, but let's just say, Matt, I mean, you or I walk into that practice, and this is very much up both of our alleys, right? This is very getting to a productive solo, something we've both done, we can do. It's very much in our skill set, kind of level 1 practice owner. I mean, I call it level 1 practice ownership. It's like level 1 shared practices ownership, like not like in the country, it's, not viewed that way, but this is like very much in what we teach in our philosophy, like the first step, getting to productive solo. So, how long do you think this would take you walking into that practice?
I mean, she has 600 patients now. I mean, I could pretty immediately get that up to at least 500, 600K collections a year. So the next jump would be adding much more patients.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, like it would just be a matter of until I could get enough patients. How long till I could get maybe 1,200 patients? And then,
but did you agree with my philosophy of getting the team in place, getting that to 500 or 600K, and then using the money you got from that to start marketing? Because if you don't have a solid infrastructure, there's no point in spending money.
Sure. I mean, I think if you asked me that 8 months ago, I may not have seen that approach, but from working with you, like needing the infrastructure to at least a little bit be there before the demand is coming is essential. Like if she really started marketing and I don't know, found some way to really make inwards with that and started see a lot of new patients, she'd be scrambling to hire people and to organize everything. And, this is a much more sound, sustainable way of approaching it, getting a little infrastructure and then get the demand up.
And then maximizing, so Matt's saying it, and I'll say it in different terms, right? Maximizing your revenue per patient is what that's both of our first step that we identified. This practice is underperforming in revenue per patient. So we can maximize that. And 500 or 600K, I think, is what we both feel like we could do. Maybe Matt more than me. Maybe Matt 600K, I'm 450 with this practice. And, then what's the next step is, but how long do you think it would take you? I think I'd get there a little bit quicker, but I think you get there a little bit longer with a higher ceiling on that first step. But I think for me, it's 3-4 months. I think for you, it might be like 6.
Mm-hmm.
Does that feel appropriate?
Yeah.
And then that next step is what's going to take the longest. So she's going to be stuck at that like overperforming, and it's hard to be overperforming at 600K, but overperforming at 600K practice. I think it's a solid year for either of us to get from there to $1 million. And that's the step that I hate about this process is the difficulty of patient flow,
just the marketing challenge that is ahead.
Yeah.
Just it doesn't excite
and
me.
Then 3 ops, like,
Oof.
So then, but then let's be positive for a minute here. Then a year and a half from now, she's sitting on a practice that could be valued at 750. If she does everything really well. Like if you or I walk into this practice, we're a year and a half sitting out with a practice that's valued at 750 that we spent 150 on.
Yeah, I mean the upside's huge, of course.
Yeah, but is it really that huge? That's my point here. It's like, yeah, right, 600. She's quadrupled or whatever the value, 5 times the value of the practice. But like, we started with a small number, so 5 times a small number is still not the
Not
most.
that big of a number.
Yeah, that's sort of my antithesis of this argument. So I get it, right? If your plan is to be a solo, this is by far the best way to maximize equity in your practice quickly. I mean, right? Would you say that?
Yeah, but I still don't. I don't
I don't
prefer
recommend
it.
it to anybody because
No.
it's if you do everything extremely well, does it work off?
Extremely well, and she needs to be supported with this too. Like with all the roadblocks and challenges ahead. That's why I even asked you after you interviewed her if you discussed, supporting her with coaching, because like I know it's tough to justify it when she's collecting $15K a month. But if she wants to grow faster, she's going to need something like that.
And this is where I think you and I don't know if we philosophically disagree. I think we both feel that, especially like this is really this practice, systems in place. Like this is very much the how-tos need to be done here. The what to, and this is like our interviews are a lot of what to do, not how to do them. And the how-tos are coaching conversations that really need to be happening with our department. And that is and so I think we both agree that it's necessary. I think where we philosophically disagree is you as the owner of $15,000 a month practice would definitely invest and cut your timeline down. And I think, that's I don't know. It's just, it's a tough situation to be in when you have such little cash flow.
Yeah, I mean, it's just about how quickly do you want it? Like, are you willing to do whatever it takes? If you're not, fine. Like, just know it's going to take a little longer.
Yeah, and she'll probably double her timeline, without any help, for sure. But, it is what it is. This is, again, she's a cool person, great listener, really enjoy talking to her on and off air. We have a lot in common. Off air, we kind of talked about that. But the practice selection that she entered into made everything about her journey just much more challenging.
Yeah. And a couple of things that you guys pointed out, the value of PBN, knowing that the seller diagnosed like twice as more and sold more dentistry, which she just kind of assumed, oh, I'm doing things better than he was.
Yeah.
Was actually not true, which is incredible that PBN can show so clearly what's actually going on.
I think that was the second time that a new owner, I've called them out on because imagine without practice by numbers, that's every other coaching relationship that has ever existed before us.
Yeah.
Was no PBN included. And it was at my old job, I was busy. I was producing 60, 70K a month, whatever. And then it's like, okay, well, none of that matters because you're in this practice where your diagnosis is half as much as the seller's. So, that's what I love about it is that you can call people out on that crap right away. And it's not like she was lying. She just didn't know.
Right. Yeah.
But it takes all the guesswork out of it. It's like, nope, that's a flaw.
Yeah, for sure. And another like great conversation you went into was all the stuff with the hygienist, how she viewed her kind of as like not a fit because she offered some resistance when you pointed out all the things she was actually throwing at her at once. And like, well, what would you react if you did something for 20 years and then this new person who's 2 years out of school is like telling you all these different techniques and x-rays and like having some compassion for that person who's done it in one office for a long time and you throwing a bunch at her.
And I think this is where, Matt, maybe my background as the guy that bought a practice, kept my entire team, but watched every single one of them change, transform into somebody who fits the new practice is sort of where I came from with that. Because again, I had a hygienist, and I think I said this on air, that I had a hygienist very resemblant of that hygienist. And the easy thing to do would have been to just let her go, replace her with somebody younger who fits. But, I think I tend to come pro staff and really encouraging dentists to up their leadership game as opposed to just replacing somebody.
Yeah. I mean, I went through this with my hygienist who's still been with me this whole time. Like she put up resistance at just about everything I implemented.
Everything.
Every single thing. And why it wouldn't work and why the patients wouldn't like it. And oh my gosh. But it's so worth it though. Like
so worth it.
I wouldn't have done it any other way.
Yeah. And and for me, I look back at the relationship I have with that staff member or the staff members. And anytime a staff member grows, you become closer with them because you guys shared that difficult experience together, and then you watch the growth, and now you can identify and acknowledge the growth. And so, yeah, I mean, this, and I think the whole staff talking about you behind your back thing is like, that's definitely happening, especially when you're throwing everything at somebody. That's definitely going to happen, and that's okay. Like, it doesn't mean you're a bad owner. And that's the thing I was trying to get out of her, that she wouldn't really get, was what it means about yourself that she's trying to avoid. But it definitely. I think I tend to be pro staff, and trying to encourage doctors to up leadership instead of replace people.
Yeah, that was a good point. Like, they're always going to be gossiping about you. Like, it's not a negative thing. It's just you're their boss. Like you said, you're their boss, and you're interesting. So they're going to talk about you, and you can't stop it, and you can't like use that as a roadblock for you to implement things just because they might say things. I don't know.
I use this example with my team. Matt, have you ever seen Orange is the New Black?
Yeah.
So this is a show about people in prison on Netflix, and there was a chicken in the yard once, and they all freaked out about how there's a chicken in the prison. And she had called her boyfriend, who's not in prison. He's like, "Why is everyone making such a big deal about a chicken?" And it's like, when you're in this environment where nothing is changing, any amount of change or difference is very interesting to everyone there. And so as their boss, you are the chicken in the yard. You are the most interesting thing in the practice. And any small change in your life, I mean, Matt, I'm sure they all commented on your hair back when it was long.
Of course.
It's anything. My dating life is like my practice's conversation, and so it is just everything about that is, interesting. And so, I think it's really up to you as the owner to be able to filter through that and say, okay, what's a real thing that I need to address about staff gossip, and what's just regular staff gossip?
Yeah, and it's tough because like you could think, well, I don't talk about what they wear, what their hair looks like, so why should they talk about mine? But it's not a smart way to look at it. Like, I had two other thoughts. One of which, I love how she's like the in-between. She kind of likes the patient interaction, but she also tries to wrap it up quick. I feel like that's what I am too.
I think that's most people that are like semi-social.
I very, it's like the George Costanza. You say the joke, get them laughing, and you go out on that high note. Like when you say something that clicks, all right, see you later. I always try to end every interaction on a nice high note, and then I'm out of there.
It's funny. I think I stay in the room. You get a patient now, and I will stay in the room 1 in 10 times.
Yeah, I'm usually out of there.
But the one time I'm staying is because I want to chat with that patient about something that we have in common. Usually it's golf.
It's usually golf. Yeah.
The golfers I stay. Everyone else I'm out. And I have nowhere to go other than go sit in my office for 4 minutes while the anesthetic kicks in.
Yeah, it's usually anesthetic. I'm out the door. Usually I'm chatting with the SP team or you. And then the one I stay is I ask them about courses I haven't played or a country club I'm looking at joining. Like, that's the only thing that gets me to stay.
I love that we have that in common.
And the last thing I want to say is her parents listen to the show. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you. So I've been with Share Practice for over a year now. I still have to tell my parents the name of the business that I'm a partner in. I still have to explain it. And it's been like 15 times I've explained this thing. It's such a different world. I so wish they were involved and listened in somehow. And that's really cool that her dad
I think it's super cool. And honestly, I think part of my, saying that she bought a practice that I didn't agree with, I almost felt guilty saying it because I know her dad's going to listen. And I didn't want him to, but Dad, I apologize.
And Dad, so cool that you funded the mailers. Like,
yeah, I think I'm looking at her parents like, man, that's awesome. I
totally want to be that for my kids.
Yeah, I think that was, as a parent, I'm looking at it as, I want to be that involved in my kids' lives and that into what they're into, and so, this is really cool. This is pretty nitty gritty in her profession that you're not a part of to know what it is. So, really, really knuckles, Dad. Knuckles.
Pound it, I think is the way the kids say it.
Right. I'm not talking to a kid. I'm talking to Knuckles, right?
Okay. Oh, all right. That's all I got.
All right. This was a really fun interview, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys next week on Practice Underwater.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Practice Underwater. We'll see you guys next week.
If you're interested in one-on-one coaching with either Dr. George Hariri or Dr. Matt Garino, our contact emails are in the show notes.
And if you're interested in being on Practice Underwater as a guest, where we could look at your practice anonymously, you can go ahead and contact the email in the show notes and follow those directions to get on the show. Thanks, and we'll see you guys next week on Practice Underwater.